The sun hadn't cleared the eastern ridge when Elias Crow rode into Red Hollow, and that should have told people something right there. Most travelers waited for full light before crossing the Badlands, waited until they could see what was coming. But Elias had stopped caring about what was coming a long time ago. The horse beneath him was the color of old rust, patches of brown and copper mixing with white around the muzzle. Moved like it was thinking about every step, considering whether this particular patch of dirt was worth the effort. The animal's name was Rust, which wasn't creative but fit. Some things didn't need fancy names. They just needed to be what they were. Elias himself looked like he'd been left out in the weather too long. Skin dark from sun, crease deep around the eyes and mouth. Thin in the way men get when they've been riding alone for years, eating when they remember, sleeping when exhaustion wins. His hat had a hole near the brim, his coat had patches on the patches, and his hands, those were the hands of someone who'd worked for everything and kept nothing. He was 63, though nobody in Red Hollow would know that. He looked 70. Felt 90 most mornings. The town itself wasn't much. One main street, buildings squatting low against the dust like they were embarrassed to be there. A saloon that leaned slightly left. A general store with boards over one window. A livery stable that smelled like it hadn't been cleaned since statehood. Population maybe 200 on a good day, less when people remembered there were better places to be. Elias guided Russ toward the stable, moving slow. Everything he did was slow now. Had to be. Help you? The stable hand was young, couldn't have been more than 16. Pimples on his chin, shirt 2 sizes too big. He looked at Elias the way young people look at old people everywhere, like furniture that can talk. Need boarding, Elias said. His voice came out rough like he didn't use it much. Week, maybe 2. $1 a day, feed included. Fair. Elias dismounted, and it wasn't graceful. He had to grip the saddle, lower himself careful, and even then his knees made sounds when his boots hit ground. The kid pretended not to notice, which Elias appreciated more than he'd say. He ran his hand along Russ's neck, checking the horse over with practiced efficiency. Old habits. The animal had carried him through territories where one bad step meant both of them dead, so checking became ritual. Became prayer, maybe, though Elias didn't think about it that way. He drinks a lot, Elias told the kid. More than most, and he doesn't like being approached from the left side first thing in morning. Spooks him. The kid nodded, already bored. Sure, mister. I'm serious about the water. I said sure. Elias wanted to say more. Wanted to explain that Rust wasn't just any horse, that they'd been through things together that mattered. But the kid's face had that blank look people get when they're hearing words without listening to them, so Elias just pulled his saddlebag free and paid for 3 days up front. There a boarding house? He asked. Mrs. Chen's, end of the street. She's Chinese, but she don't cheat on portions. Elias let that pass. Much obliged. He walked toward the boarding house, feeling every one of his years in his lower back. Behind him, he heard the kid mutter something to another stable hand, heard them both laugh. Didn't matter, he'd been laughed at before. Would be again. Mrs. Chen was exactly what her name suggested, a Chinese woman, maybe 50, with sharp eyes that sized up Elias in 2 seconds and decided he wasn't trouble. Her boarding house smelled like boiled cabbage and old wood, but it was clean. That counted for more than people thought. 1 week, she said. Not a question. Maybe 2. Same price either way. Pay up front. He did. She gave him a room on the 2nd floor, small, with a bed that sagged in the middle and a window that looked out on the back alley. Perfect. He'd spent years in worse. That first day, Elias didn't do much. Unpacked his few belongings, washed his face in the basin, lay down on the bed to rest his back. Closed his eyes and listened to the town moving around him. Horses, voices, the saloon piano starting up around noon. Anonymous sounds, comfortable in their anonymity. Around sunset, he went to check on Rust. The horse was in a decent stall, had water, looked settled. The kid was gone, replaced by an older man with a limp who nodded at Elias without speaking. That was fine. Elias wasn't here to make friends. He ate dinner at the saloon because it was the only place serving food. Stew that tasted like the cook had given up halfway through, bread that was fresh that morning and stale now. He sat in the corner, back to the wall, and watched people pretend he wasn't there. Red Hollow had maybe 30 people in the saloon that night, ranchers, drifters, a few town folks who didn't have anywhere better to be. They talked loud, laughed louder, drank steadily. The kind of crowd that forms in small towns everywhere, people who know each other too well, and strangers passing through like water. Nobody talked to Elias. That suited him fine. He finished his stew, left coins on the table, and walked back to the boarding house under stars so bright they hurt to look at. His room was dark and quiet, and he slept without dreaming, which was the best kind of sleep there was. The second day started the same. Breakfast at Mrs. Chen's, eggs, weak coffee, toast, then to the stable to check on Rust, then back to the boarding house to sit on the porch and watch the town move. That's when he first saw Jace Cutter. 5 riders came in around mid-morning, moving fast enough to kick up dust, but not so fast they looked panicked. Young men, all of them, early 20s maybe. They wore their guns like jewelry, low-slung, polished, the kind of men who thought violence was a personality. The one in front was the youngest and the loudest. Blonde hair, good teeth, face that had never been really hungry or really scared. He sat his horse like he owned it and everything else in sight. They pulled up in front of the saloon and dismounted with that careless confidence young men have before the world teaches them different. The blonde one, Jace, Elias would learn later, was talking before his boots hit dirt. "This the whole town." His voice carried, meant to carry. "Hell, I've seen bigger outhouses." His crew laughed. They were good at laughing on cue. Elias watched from the boarding house porch, 40 yards away. Watched the way they moved, the way they checked their surroundings without seeming to. Not amateurs then, dangerous, but in that unformed way young dangerous men are before they've been tested hard. The sheriff appeared, a thick man named Boone with a badge that looked too small for his chest. He'd been sitting in front of his office whittling something useless. "Can I help you, boys?" Jace turned, grinning. "We're just passing through, Sheriff. Thought we'd wet our whistles, maybe play some cards. That legal in this fine establishment? Long as you pay your tab and don't start trouble." "Trouble?" Jace put his hand over his heart, wounded. "Sheriff, do we look like trouble?" They looked like exactly that, but Boone wasn't stupid enough to say it. "Just keep it peaceable." "Peaceable as lambs, Sheriff. Peaceable as lambs." They went into the saloon, and Elias watched Boone watch them go. The sheriff's face had that tight expression lawmen get when they know something's coming, but can't stop it yet. He caught Elias looking at him, held his gaze for a second, then went back to his whittling. The day continued. Elias walked to the general store, bought tobacco he didn't need just to have something to do, checked on Rust again. The horse was fine. Always was. But Elias checked anyway. Came back to the porch and watched the town some more. Around 3, things started getting loud in the saloon. Not fighting loud. Not yet. Just the escalating noise of young men drinking, voices getting bigger, laughter getting meaner. Elias had heard it 1,000 times. It always went the same way. Around 4, one of Jace's crew stumbled out to piss in the alley. Came back wiping his mouth, already drunk enough to stagger. The piano stopped for a while, then started again, but shakier. The player knew the temperature was rising. Elias thought about going inside, thought about having a drink, sitting where he could see what developed. But his back hurt and his knees hurt, and he was tired of other people's problems, so he stayed on the porch. Around 5, Jace came out. He wasn't drunk. That was the thing. His crew was drunk, but Jace walked straight, eyes clear. He stood on the saloon porch and looked around Red Hollow like he was appraising livestock. His gaze found Elias. For a moment they just looked at each other. Old man on a boarding house porch, young man on a saloon porch, 40 yards of dusty street between them. Then Jace smiled, the kind of smile that has nothing friendly in it, and went back inside. That night, Elias dreamed for the first time in months. Nothing specific, just fragments, a town burning, people screaming, the weight of a gun in his hand and the sick knowledge that he'd have to use it. He woke at 3 in the morning, covered in cold sweat, heart racing like he'd run miles. Took him an hour to fall back asleep. The third day, Jace found him. Elias was at the stable brushing Rust down. The horse didn't need it. The stable hands were doing their job, but Elias liked the routine, liked the rhythm of it. Brush, stroke, check, move. His hands knew the pattern so well his mind could drift. That's a hell of an animal. Elias turned. Jace was leaning against the stall door, arms crossed, that smile still on his face. Up close, he was even younger than Elias thought, maybe 22, baby fat still softening his jaw. He's old, Elias said. Old like you, huh? Jace's smile widened. What is he, 20? 25? 18. Ancient in horse years, surprised he can still walk. Elias went back to brushing. Rust's ear twitched. The only sign the horse knew someone new was there. I'm Jace Cutter, the young man said, like the name should mean something. Elias Crow. You just passing through, Elias? That's right. Heading where? Nowhere particular. Jace laughed, but there was an edge to it. Man your age, no destination, riding a horse that should be put down. That's a sad picture, friend. Elias kept brushing. We all got our pictures. See, that's wisdom right there. Old man wisdom. Jace pushed off the door, moved closer. Let me ask you something, Elias. You ever look at yourself and think, this is it? This is what I got to show for all those years? Just you and a dying horse and a boarding house room that smells like piss? I don't think about it much. Maybe you should. Might motivate you to do something before you dry up completely. Elias stopped brushing, turned to look at Jace full on. The young man was still smiling, but his eyes had gone flat. This wasn't banter anymore. This was testing. I appreciate your concern, Elias said quietly, but I'm fine. You don't look fine. You look like you're waiting to die. Maybe I am. That surprised Jace. His smile faltered for just a second. Then it came back harder. Well, hell, at least you're honest. He left, but slowly, making sure Elias watched him go. Making sure everyone in the stable saw him walk away on his own terms. The stable hand, the older one with the limp, came over after Jace was gone. You all right, mister? Fine. That Cutter boy, he's been making noise all over town. Says he's going to run things here. Says the sheriff's too old and too slow. Sheriff know that? Sheriff knows everything, just doesn't know what to do about it yet. Elias nodded. This was an old story. Young men with guns and no sense, small town with no real law, collision coming like weather. He'd seen it play out in a dozen places, had been part of it playing out back when he was young and stupid enough to think it mattered. It'll sort itself, he said. The stable hand looked doubtful, but didn't argue. That night, Elias sat in his room and cleaned his gun. Not because he thought he'd need it, just because it was another ritual, another pattern his hands knew. The Colt was old, older than rust, worn down to bare metal in places. But it still fired true. He'd made sure of that. He hadn't drawn it in anger in 12 years, hadn't fired it at a person in 14. He'd put that life behind him like you'd put away a coat that didn't fit anymore. But the coat was still there, hanging in the closet, and some nights like this, he took it out and remembered what it felt like to wear it. The fourth day, things got worse. Elias was walking back from breakfast when he heard shouting. Not saloon shouting, scared shouting. He turned the corner and saw a crowd gathered in the street outside the general store. Jace and his crew were there. They had a man on the ground, one of the local ranchers, older guy with gray in his beard. Jace was standing over him, relaxed, like they were discussing the weather. I'm telling you, Jace was saying, your daughter looked at me. That means something. She's 17. The rancher's voice was shaking. She didn't mean nothing by it. She smiled, old man. She smiled and she looked. Where I come from, that's an invitation. Please, she's a good girl. She didn't. Jace kicked him. Not hard, just enough to make him grunt and curl up. The crowd flinched, but nobody moved. Sheriff Boone was there, hand on his gun, but not drawing. His face was red, veins standing out on his neck. That's enough, Cutter. Is it? Jace turned to him, eyebrows raised. I'm just having a conversation, Sheriff. Man's daughter flirts with me. I figure I should talk to the father. That's respectful, isn't it? Step away from him. Or what? The silence that followed was the kind that breaks things. Boone's hand tightened on his gun. Jace's crew shifted, hands drifting toward their own weapons. The crowd held its breath. Then Jace laughed. Relax, Sheriff. I'm done talking anyway. He looked down at the rancher. You tell that pretty daughter of yours I'll be seeing her around. Make sure she knows. He walked away. His crew followed. The rancher stayed on the ground until his friends helped him up. Nobody met anyone else's eyes. Elias watched from the edge of the crowd, watched the rancher limp away, watched Boone stand there with his jaw clenched and his hand still on his gun, watched the town go back to pretending everything was normal. He went to the stable. Rust was dozing, one hind leg cocked, head down. Elias leaned against the stall and just looked at him. The horse was the only thing in his life that had stuck, the only thing that hadn't left or died or been lost to time. 18 years together. 18 years of trails and rivers and mountains and deserts, of close calls and narrow escapes and nights when they'd both been certain they wouldn't see morning. We should move on, Elias said quietly. Ain't our fight. Rust's ear twitched. Might have been agreement, might have been a fly. Town like this, it's got to figure things out for itself. We done our time playing hero. The horse sighed, the kind of deep exhale animals make when they're settling in for a long rest. I'm serious. We can be gone by tomorrow. But he knew he wouldn't leave. Knew it the same way he knew his knees would hurt in the morning and the sun would come up in the east. Some things you just knew. That night, the saloon was tense. Elias went in for dinner and found half the usual crowd missing. The people who were there talked in low voices, kept checking the door. Jace and his crew had a table in the back, playing cards, drinking steady. Every so often, Jace would look up and scan the room, like a predator checking for threats. His eyes found Elias. This time, he didn't smile, just looked. Held the gaze for 5 seconds, then went back to his cards. Elias ate his stew, left his coins, went back to the boarding house. Mrs. Chen was sitting on the porch, smoking a thin cigar. You should leave, she said when he sat down beside her. That right? That boy, he's looking for someone to hurt. He's bored and mean, and the combination makes him stupid. You're old and alone, and you got something he wants to take from you. What's that? Pride. He sees you don't got much, figures that makes you desperate. Desperate is easy to break. Elias rocked in his chair. Maybe I don't break easy. Everyone breaks. She blew smoke into the night air. Just depends on how much pressure you can take first. My husband, he was stubborn like you. Thought he could outlast the men who wanted his business. They broke him in 3 days, broke him so bad he never fixed. She looked at Elias. You got that same stubbornness in your eyes, same foolishness. I'm not looking for trouble. Trouble don't care what you're looking for. She went inside, leaving Elias on the porch alone. He sat there until the stars came out, thinking about all the times he'd ridden into towns like this and seen men like Jace. Young, mean, testing boundaries. Most of them learned eventually. Some learned hard. A few never learned at all and ended up in graves so shallow you could see their bones when it rained. Jace would be one of those, Elias figured. Too much pride, not enough sense. The type who'd push until someone pushed back, then push harder until the whole thing collapsed on everyone. 5th day. The worst one yet. Elias was bringing rust water. The stable hands kept forgetting, kept giving him the standard amount instead of the extra he needed, when he heard boots behind him. All 5 of them this time, Jace and his crew, forming a loose semicircle at the stable entrance, blocking the way out. Morning, Elias, Jace said. He looked fresh, like he'd slept well and was ready for the day. His crew looked hungover and mean, dangerous combination. Morning. I've been thinking about you, about that horse of yours. Elias poured water into Rust's trough, taking his time. The horse drank, unconcerned. That right? Yeah, see, I think you love that animal. I think maybe it's the only thing in the world you give a damn about. Elias didn't answer. That's sad, you know. Man your age, nothing but a horse. No family, no friends, no legacy. Just you and this bag of bones. We all got what we got. True. But here's what I've been wondering. What happens to a man like you when you lose the one thing you care about? Do you just fold? Or do you got some fight left? Elias turned then, facing Jace full on. I'm not looking for this. I know you're not. That's what makes it fun. One of the crew members, a skinny kid with a scar on his cheek, laughed. We could find out right now, Jace. Put a bullet in the horse, see what the old man does. Rust's head came up. The horse's ears went back, and for the first time, Elias saw recognition in the animal's eyes. Not fear. Recognition. Like Rust knew exactly what was being discussed and was ready for it. You don't want to do this, Elias said quietly. Don't I? Jace stepped closer. See, I think I do. I think this whole town needs a lesson in respect, and you're going to be the example. Walk away. Make me, old man. The moment stretched. Elias's hand drifted toward his gun, not threatening, just resting there. An old habit. Jace saw it, and his smile got wider. Oh, this is perfect. You gonna draw on me? You gonna... Problem here? Sheriff Boone's voice cutting through like a knife. He was standing at the stable entrance, hand on his gun, face red but determined. Jace turned, annoyed. Just having a conversation, Sheriff. Conversation's over. You boys move along. We're not done here. Yes, you are. Boone's hand tightened on his gun. Move. Along. For a second, it could have gone either way. Then Jace shrugged, theatrical. Sure, Sheriff, whatever you say. He looked back at Elias. We'll finish this later, old man. Count on it. They left. Boone stayed until they were gone, then looked at Elias. You need to leave, he said. Tonight, before this gets worse. Can't do that. Why the hell not? Because he'll find someone else, someone who can't defend themselves. Boone's face twisted. That's not your problem. Maybe it should be somebody's problem. You think you're going to stand up to 5 armed men at your age? Elias didn't answer, just went back to checking Rust, running his hands over the horse's legs, feeling for heat or swelling. Old habits. Old rituals. Christ, Boone muttered, you're as stupid as the rest of them. He walked away, but slower this time, like part of him wanted to stay. That afternoon, Elias sat on Mrs. Chen's porch and watched the town move. Watched people hurry from building to building, eyes down, trying not to be noticed. Watched Jace and his crew swagger through the street, taking up space, making noise. Watched the sun move across the sky like it had all the time in the world. Around sunset, he went to the saloon, ordered whiskey for the first time since arriving. The bartender, a bald man with sad eyes, poured it generous. Heard about the stable? He said quietly. News travels. It does in small towns. He wiped the bar, methodical. You know what Cutter's been saying? He's been telling everyone you're yellow, says you folded soon as he showed teeth. That's one way to see it. Is there another way? Elias sipped his whiskey. Man gets to my age, he learns fighting ain't about proving something. It's about ending something. And you're going to end this? Didn't say that, but the bartender heard what wasn't said. He nodded slowly, poured Elias another whiskey without being asked, and moved down the bar. Jace came in an hour later, saw Elias sitting alone at a corner table and smiled like Christmas had come early. Well, look at this. The old man's drinking his courage. He pulled out a chair and sat down without being invited. Up close, Elias could smell the whiskey on his breath, the arrogance in his sweat. You thinking about tomorrow, Elias? Thinking about what's coming? I'm thinking about my drink, liar. You're thinking about that horse, wondering if you can stop me, wondering if you still got it. Elias met his eyes. Got what? Whatever you used to have before you got old and scared. I'm not scared. Everyone's scared. Question is, are you scared enough to be smart? Smart enough to ride out tonight and keep riding? And if I don't? Jace leaned back, laced his fingers behind his head. Then tomorrow, around noon, I'm going to go to that stable. I'm going to put my gun to that horse's head, and I'm going to wait for you to stop me. Why? Because I can. Because this town needs to learn who's in charge. And because watching a man break is the most honest thing in the world. He stood up. Sleep well, old man. Dream about all the choices you could have made different. He left. The saloon went quiet. Everyone had heard. Everyone knew. Elias finished his whiskey, paid, and walked back to the boarding house under stars that didn't care about small-town showdowns or old men with worn-out horses. Mrs. Chen was waiting on the porch. You're staying, she said. I'm staying. Why? Elias thought about it. Thought about all the towns he'd ridden through, all the Jaces he'd seen come and go. Thought about Rust dozing in a stable, trusting that the world would make sense in the morning. Because somebody has to, he finally said. She nodded like she understood, which maybe she did. My husband said the same thing. How'd that work out? He's dead. Yeah. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the town settle into night. Finally, Mrs. Chen stood, stubbed out her cigar, and went inside. At the door, she paused. Boone came by earlier, asked me about you. I told him you were just an old drifter, nobody special. What'd he say? He said that's what worries him. Said most old drifters got sense enough to run. She looked at Elias. You got something you're not showing, don't you? Something from before. Elias didn't answer. She smiled, sad. That's what I thought. Well, whatever it is, I hope it's enough. She went inside, leaving Elias alone with the night. He sat there until the stars moved, until the town went fully quiet, until the only sounds were dogs barking in the distance and the wind moving through the spaces between buildings. Then he went upstairs, lay down on his sagging bed, and closed his eyes. Sleep didn't come easy. When it finally did, he dreamed of fire again, of screaming, of the weight of a gun in his hand and the sick certainty that tomorrow he'd remember what it felt like to use it. He woke at dawn, stiff and sore and old, washed his face, dressed slow, strapped on his gun, feeling the familiar weight settle against his hip. Then he walked downstairs and stepped out into the morning light. The town was waking up, smoke from breakfast fires, the sound of Mrs. Chen's chickens. Somewhere, a baby crying. Normal sounds. Normal morning. Except everyone knew what was coming at noon. Elias walked to the stable. Rust was awake, watching the door like he'd been expecting company. Elias went into the stall, ran his hand along the horse's neck. Today might get complicated, he said quietly. Just wanted you to know, whatever happens, you've been the best partner a man could ask for. Rust turned his head, pressed his muzzle against Elias's chest. Warm breath, solid weight, 18 years of trust in that gesture. Elias stayed there for a while, just breathing with the horse, remembering all the trails they'd ridden, all the close calls they'd survived. Then he stepped back, checked his gun one more time, and walked out into the street. The sun was climbing, shadows shrinking, time moving forward like it always did, carrying everyone toward noon whether they wanted to go or not. Somewhere in town, Jace Cutter was waking up, getting ready, loading his gun, feeling that electric anticipation young men feel before violence, before they learn what violence really costs. And Elias stood in the street, old and worn and ready, waiting for noon to arrive and the whole thing to play out the way these things always played out. One way or another, Red Hollow would remember this day. One way or another, something was going to break. The hours between dawn and noon moved like molasses in winter. Elias spent most of them sitting on the boarding house porch, watching Red Hollow wake up and realize what day it was. You could see the knowledge spreading through town like a sickness, people moving quicker, talking quieter, finding reasons to be anywhere except the main street. Mrs. Chen brought him coffee around 8, didn't say anything, just set the cup down beside him and went back inside. The coffee was good, strong enough to taste like a decision. He drank it slow. Around 9, Sheriff Boone walked past, stopped at the bottom of the porch steps, looked up at Elias with something between anger and resignation. "You're really doing this," Boone said. "Looks like. I could arrest you, disturbing the peace, intent to commit violence, lock you up until Cutter and his boys get bored and leave. You could. But I won't, because then Cutter wins anyway. He gets to run this town, and I get to be the sheriff who let him." Boone's jaw worked like he was chewing something bitter. "You know what the worst part is? I can't tell if you're brave or just tired of living." "Maybe both. That's not comforting." Elias set down his empty cup. "Wasn't meant to be." Boone stood there another moment, then shook his head and walked on. His shoulders were tight, hands clenched. A man carrying weight he didn't want but couldn't put down. By 10, the street was nearly empty. Shop doors closed, shutters pulled. The town had made its choice. Stay inside, stay safe, let whatever happened happen without witnesses. Elias didn't blame them. Most people went their whole lives avoiding moments like this. The smart ones, anyway. At 10:30, Jace's crew started filtering out of the saloon. They moved casual, spreading out along the street like they were just enjoying the morning air. But their positions were strategic, covering angles, blocking exits. They'd done this before. Maybe not a showdown like this, but something close enough to know how to set the stage. The skinny one with the scar, his name was Pike, Elias had learned, took up position near the stable. Another one, heavy-set with a drooping mustache, stood by the general store. The other two flanked the saloon entrance. All of them armed, all of them watching Elias with the kind of attention cats give mice. Jace himself didn't appear until 1:45. He came out of the saloon like an actor making an entrance, thumbs hooked in his belt, that smile plastered across his face. He'd changed clothes, fresh shirt, clean pants. Looked like he was going to a dance instead of whatever this was. "Morning, Elias," he called across the street. His voice echoed off the empty buildings. "Beautiful day, isn't it?" Elias stood up from his chair. His knees protested. His back sent up a flare of pain, but he stood anyway, started walking toward the street. "Where you going, old man?" Jace asked. "I said noon. Still got 15 minutes. Figured I'd save you the walk to the stable." "Consider it. I appreciate that." Jace stepped down into the street proper, his crew adjusting their positions to maintain their coverage. "But see, I wasn't just going to shoot the horse. That's too quick. I was going to make you watch while I decided whether or not to pull the trigger. Give you time to beg, maybe. That's the fun part." "I don't beg." "Everyone begs eventually." Jace was moving closer now, crossing the distance between them with slow, deliberate steps. "I seen hard men cry like babies when you take something they love. Seen tough old ranchers fold up like paper. You won't be different." Elias stopped in the middle of the street, hands loose at his sides. "Maybe not, but you won't know until you try." That made Jace pause. His smile flickered. "You got more spine than I thought. I'll give you that." "Just tired of your voice." The smile came back, harder. "Well then, let's speed this up." Jace turned toward the stable, and that's when Elias saw it. The slight hitch in his step, the way his right hand drifted toward his gun. Not drawing, just checking. A nervous habit. The boy was scared under all that swagger. Not much, but enough. "Your daddy teach you to shoot?" Elias asked. Jace stopped. "What?" "Your daddy. He teach you how to handle that gun you're wearing?" "Hell no. My daddy was a shopkeeper. Died when I was 12. "So you're self-taught." "Taught myself just fine. Put 5 men in the ground already." Jace's hand was on his gun now, fingers drumming the grip. "Why? You worried about my credentials?" "Just curious what makes a man your age think he's ready to die." That landed. Jace's face went tight, the smile finally dropping away. "Who says I'm the one dying today?" "Statistics, mostly. Young men with fast guns, they usually end up fast corpses." "Is that what you are? Some kind of expert?" Elias didn't answer. One of Jace's crew, the heavy-set one by the general store, called out, "Hey Jace, you gonna let this old bastard talk to you like that?" "Shut up, Monroe." Jace hadn't taken his eyes off Elias. "I'm thinking." "About what?" Elias asked. "About whether you're bluffing or stupid." "Could be both." "Could be." Jace tilted his head, studying Elias like a puzzle he couldn't quite solve. "See, here's my problem. You're standing there all calm, no shake in your hands, no sweat on your forehead. Man your age should be pissing himself right now, but you're not, which means either you got ice water for blood or you got a secret you're not sharing. Maybe I'm just old enough not to care." "Nobody's that old." A door opened behind Elias, one of the shops. He heard it creak, heard footsteps. Turned his head slightly and saw Sheriff Boone stepping out, shotgun cradled in his arms. "That's far enough, Boone," Jace called. "This doesn't concern you." "It concerns me when you're threatening to shoot livestock in my town." "I'm not threatening anything. Just having a conversation with my friend Elias here. Right, Elias?" Elias looked at Boone, then back at Jace. "Just talking." Boone's face reddened. "Bullshit. I know what this is." "What it is," Jace said, voice dropping to something colder, "is between me and the old man. You want to get involved, Sheriff, you better be ready to make it official. Otherwise, step back and let men handle their business. There's 5 of you and 1 of him. So? Odds are on his side if he's half as tough as he's pretending. Boone's knuckles were white on the shotgun. For a second, Elias thought the sheriff might actually do something stupid. Then Boone's shoulders sagged, just a fraction, and Elias knew the moment had passed. "I'll remember this, Cutter," Boone said quietly. "I'm sure you will. Now get back inside before you get hurt." Boone held his ground another few seconds, then retreated into his office. The door closed with a sound like surrender. Jace turned back to Elias, the smile creeping back. "Well, looks like it's just us after all." "Guess so." "You know what? I changed my mind. I'm not going to shoot your horse." "That right?" "Yeah, I'm going to let Pike here do it." Jace gestured toward the stable. "Pike, get that animal out here. I want the old man to see this up close." Pike disappeared into the stable. Elias's hands twitched, but he forced them still, forced himself to breathe steady, to stay calm. This was it. The moment everything tipped one way or another, Pike came back leading Rust. The horse moved slow, unconcerned, like this was just another walk. His eyes found Elias, and something passed between them. 18 years of partnership compressed into a single look. "Bring him to the middle of the street," Jace ordered. Pike did, though he looked nervous doing it. Rust towered over the skinny outlaw, and the horse's calm seemed to unsettle him. "He's awful quiet," Pike muttered. "That's because he's old and broken," Jace said. "Just like his owner. Tie him to that post there." Pike secured Rust's reins to a hitching post. The horse stood patient, waiting. Didn't pull or fuss. Just waited. Jace walked over, pulled his gun, pressed the barrel against Rust's head. The horse's ear twitched, but otherwise he didn't move. "Last chance, Elias," Jace called. "You can stop this. All you gotta do is get on your knees and beg me not to." Elias felt something cold settle in his chest. Not fear. Something older than fear. Something he'd buried years ago and promised himself he'd never dig up again. "I told you already," he said quietly. "I don't beg." "Then watch your world end." Jace's finger tightened on the trigger. And Elias moved. Not toward Jace, toward the nearest of the crew members, Monroe by the general store. 3 steps, fast as his old legs could carry him, and he had his gun out and pressed against Monroe's temple before the man could do more than yelp. "Nobody moves," Elias said. The street froze. Jace's finger was still on the trigger, but his head had snapped around, eyes wide. Pike had dropped into a crouch, hand on his gun, but not drawing. The other 2 by the saloon stood paralyzed, caught between targets. "The hell?" Jace started. "You pull that trigger," Elias interrupted, voice flat and hard. "And Monroe dies. Then I kill Pike. Then those 2 by the saloon. Then you, in that order. In about 6 seconds. And you know the funniest part?" "What?" Jace's voice had lost its swagger. "I'll probably survive it. I'm old and I'm slow, but I've done this dance more times than you've had birthdays. So you gotta ask yourself, is proving a point worth watching your whole crew die?" Silence. Monroe was breathing fast, shallow breaths of a man who suddenly understood he was a chess piece, not a player. "You're bluffing," Jay said, but his voice wavered. "Try me." More silence. A dog barked somewhere in town. The wind picked up, moving dust across the empty street. Then a voice from behind Elias, raspy and careful. "He ain't bluffing?" Elias didn't turn, but he knew that voice. Old man Garrett, who ran the telegraph office, must have been watching from his window. "I seen Elias Crow shoot," Garrett continued. 20 years back, over in Redemption, 3 men tried to rob the bank. He put them all down before they cleared leather. Fastest damn thing I ever saw." "That's impossible," Pike said. This old man used to be the law in 5 territories, Garrett said. They called him the Iron Judge, on account of he never missed and he never hesitated. Jace's face had gone pale. "The Iron Judge is dead. He died in a fire in Carson's Bend." "That's what the papers said," Garrett agreed. "Papers say a lot of things." Elias felt Monroe trembling against the gun barrel. The man was 20 pounds overweight and smelled like yesterday's whiskey. Probably had a family somewhere. Probably never expected today to end like this. "Walk away," Elias said to Jace. Take your boys, ride out, don't come back. You do that, everyone lives. And if I don't? Then in about 10 seconds, you're going to find out if those stories about me are true. Jace's hand was shaking now, the gun barrel still pressed against Rust's head, but shaking. You'd really kill all of us over a horse? No, Elias said. I'd kill all of you because you came into this town acting like you owned it, because you hurt good people who didn't deserve it, because you're a bully and a coward and the world's got too many of both. I could still pull this trigger. You could. But then Monroe dies. And the thing about Monroe here, Elias pressed the gun a little harder, making the man whimper, is he's got a wife in Kansas City, got 2 little girls. They're waiting for him to come home rich and successful. Instead, they're going to get a box with his body in it, all because you couldn't walk away from a fight you didn't need. Jace, Monroe gasped. Jace, please. Shut up, Monroe. He's going to kill me, Jace. He's really going to... I said shut up. But Monroe was beyond hearing. I got kids, Jace. I got kids, and I ain't seen them in 8 months, and if I die here... Enough! Jace's voice cracked. The gun was shaking harder now, the barrel drifting away from Rust's head. Everyone shut up and let me think. Not much to think about, Elias said. You got 2 choices. Walk away breathing or stay and die. Clock's ticking. Jace looked around at his crew, looked at Pike, who'd gone from cocky to terrified, looked at the 2 by the saloon who were slowly backing up like they wanted no part of this anymore, looked at Monroe, who was crying now, silent tears running down his fat cheeks. Then he looked at Rust. The horse was still standing there, calm as morning, like guns and death threats were just background noise. You'd have done it, Jace said quietly. If I'd pulled that trigger, you really would have killed us all. Yes. Even knowing you might die too? Especially then. Jace's gun hand dropped, not holstering, just dropping to his side. The fight went out of him like air from a punctured bladder. I don't understand you. You're old. You got nothing. Why die for nothing? Because it's not nothing, Elias said. That horse has been with me longer than anyone. Been more loyal than anyone. Saved my life more times than I can count. You were going to kill him just to make yourself feel big. That's not nothing. That's everything. Jace stared at him for a long moment. Then he holstered his gun. We're leaving. Smart. But this isn't over. Yes, it is, Elias said. You ride out now, you keep riding. You come back, I won't give you a choice next time. I'll just shoot you in the street like a dog. Understand? Jace's face twisted with humiliation and rage, but he nodded. Pike, untie the horse. Pike scrambled to free Rust. The horse didn't move, didn't react, just stood there like he'd known all along how this would play out. Monroe, Elias said quietly, I'm going to let you go now, but I swear on every grave I've dug, you come back to this town, you won't leave it alive. I won't, Monroe sobbed. I swear I won't. Elias stepped back, lowering his gun. Monroe collapsed to his knees, gasping like he'd been underwater. The other crew members rushed over, helping him up, shooting nervous glances at Elias. Jace stood alone in the middle of the street. His hands were fists, his face red. You made me look weak, he said. You did that yourself. I'll remember this. I hope you do. Hope you remember it every time you think about pulling a gun on someone who can't fight back. Hope you remember how it felt to have the tables turned. Jace opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Finally, he just turned and walked toward the saloon where their horses were tied. His crew followed, moving fast, eager to be gone. Within 5 minutes, they were mounted and riding out. Jace never looked back, but his shoulders were hunched, defeated. The swagger was gone. Maybe forever. Maybe just until the next town. Elias watched them until they disappeared into the heat shimmer on the horizon. Then he holstered his gun and walked over to Rust. The horse nuzzled his shoulder, warm breath against his neck. Elias's hands were shaking now, adrenaline bleeding off, leaving him hollow and exhausted. He leaned against Rust's shoulder and just breathed. Behind him, doors started opening. People emerging from hiding, blinking in the sunlight like they weren't sure the danger was really gone. Sheriff Boone came out of his office, shotgun still in his hands. He stopped beside Elias, stared down the road where Jace had disappeared. "The Iron Judge," Boone said quietly. Jesus Christ. The Iron Judge. That was a long time ago. Not long enough, apparently. Boone turned to look at him. "Why didn't you say something? Why let it get that far?" "Because I'm not him anymore. Haven't been for years. I put that life down and I meant it to stay down. But you picked it back up today. Today was different. How?" Elias looked at Rust. The horse's eyes were half closed now, relaxed. "They were going to hurt something that couldn't defend itself. That's different." Boone was quiet for a moment, then he said, "Thank you for what you did. For this town." "I didn't do it for the town." "I know, but we're grateful anyway." People were gathering now. Garrett from the telegraph office, Mrs. Chen from the boarding house, the bartender from the saloon. More and more of them, forming a loose crowd around Elias and Rust. "Is it true?" someone asked. "Are you really the Iron Judge?" Elias sighed. "That's a name from before. It doesn't mean anything now." "Means you saved us," another voice said. "Means you stood up when nobody else would," said another. "Means you're a hero." That word made Elias's stomach turn. "I'm not a hero. Heroes don't exist. Just people who make choices, and sometimes those choices work out, and sometimes they don't. Today they worked out, that's all." But they weren't listening. They were looking at him with something like awe, like he'd done something miraculous instead of just being too stubborn to let a bully win. Mrs. Chen pushed through the crowd. "You need to sit down. You're shaking." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You just faced down 5 armed men, and you're 63 years old. You need to sit down before you fall down." She was right. The adrenaline crash was hitting hard now, making his legs weak, his vision swim. He let her lead him back to the boarding house porch, let her bring him water and a blanket, even though the day was warm. People kept coming by, thanking him, shaking his hand, telling him stories about Jace and his crew, all the things they'd done, all the fear they'd spread, as if Elias needed justification for what he'd done. Around 2 in the afternoon, the rancher showed up, the one Jace had kicked. His face was still bruised, but his eyes were clear. "I wanted to thank you," he said, "for my daughter, for my family." "You don't need to thank me." "I do, though. Because if you hadn't stopped him..." He trailed off, unable to finish the thought. "He's gone now. Because of you. Because he got scared, that's all. He got scared and realized he wasn't invincible. Still, I owe you." Elias was too tired to argue. "Then do me a favor. Next time someone needs help, don't wait for an old man to do it. Step up yourself." The rancher's face colored. "I wanted to, I was scared. Everyone's scared. Brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the thing anyway." "Is that what you did today?" Elias thought about it, about the cold feeling in his chest when he'd moved, the old instincts taking over, the muscle memory of violence he'd thought he'd forgotten. "No. Today I was just tired of watching bad things happen to good people." The rancher nodded like he understood, though Elias doubted he did. Then he left, and more people came, and the afternoon wore on in a blur of faces and voices and gratitude Elias didn't want. By sunset, he couldn't take it anymore. He stood up, made his excuses, and walked to the stable. Rust was in his stall, eating hay, completely unbothered by the day's events. Elias let himself in and just stood there, forehead pressed against the horse's neck. "You did good today," he murmured. Stood there calm as anything while crazy happened all around you. "Wish I had half your sense." Rust kept eating. "I'm sorry I brought this down on you. Sorry I couldn't just leave like a sensible person. He stopped, not sure how to finish. "I just couldn't let them win. Couldn't let them hurt you. Does that make me stupid or stubborn?" The horse turned his head, regarded Elias with one large, patient eye. If there was an answer in that gaze, Elias couldn't read it. He stayed in the stable until full dark, just being with the horse, letting the quiet settle his nerves. When he finally went back to the boarding house, Mrs. Chen was waiting on the porch. "You're famous now," she said. "I know. People are calling you a legend, a savior." "I know that too." Does it bother you? Yes. Why? He sat down beside her, accepted the cigar she offered. Because I'm not any of those things. I'm just an old man who got backed into a corner and did what he had to. Tomorrow, I'll be just as useless as I was yesterday. Except now everyone's going to expect something from me I can't give. What's that? More of the same. More heroics. More standing up. They're going to think I'm someone I'm not. Mrs. Chen lit her cigar, blew smoke into the night. Maybe you are that person. Maybe you've been him all along and just forgot. No, that person died years ago. I killed him deliberately, buried him deep. Today was just reflex. Reflex that saved this town. For now. Until the next Jace Cutter rides in. Or the one after that. I can't save everyone. Can't even save myself most days. They smoked in silence for a while. The town was settling down, lights going out in windows, people finding their beds. Normal life resuming now that the crisis had passed. You gonna stay? Mrs. Chen asked. Don't know yet. The people here, they'd want you to. Feel safer with you around. That's exactly why I should leave. Soon as people start relying on you, you let them down. It's inevitable. Or maybe you do the thing you think you can't do and you don't let them down. Tried that before. Didn't end well. She looked at him. The fire. In Carson's Bend. He didn't ask how she knew. Small towns, people talked, stories traveled. Yeah, the fire. You want to tell me about it? No? Fair enough. They finished their cigars. Mrs. Chen went inside. Elias stayed on the porch, watching the stars come out, thinking about Carson's Bend and fires and all the people he couldn't save no matter how fast he drew. Tomorrow would bring new problems. Tomorrow the town would look at him different. Expect things he couldn't give. Tomorrow he'd have to decide whether to run again or stay and try to be something he'd given up on being. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, he was just an old man on a porch, smoking a cigar, still alive when he probably shouldn't be. Still here, when common sense said he should have ridden out days ago. Still tied to a horse who wouldn't leave him, and a town that wouldn't let him go. He stayed on that porch until the stars filled the sky and the moon rose full and bright. Until the last lights in Red Hollow went dark and silence settled over everything like a blanket. Then he went upstairs, lay down on his sagging bed, and closed his eyes. Sleep came easier tonight. No dreams of fire, no screaming, just darkness and rest and the knowledge that tomorrow he'd wake up and face whatever came next. Just like he always had. Just like he always would. The darkness didn't last. Elias woke to pounding on his door, the kind that said emergency or trouble or both. The room was still black, no hint of dawn yet. He grabbed his gun from the bedside table and moved to the door, bare feet on cold wood. What? It's Boone. Open up. Elias unlocked the door. The sheriff stood there looking like he hadn't slept, eyes red-rimmed, jaw tight. They're back, Boone said. Elias's stomach dropped. When? Spotted them an hour ago, camped about 2 miles out. Same 5. Garrett saw their fire from the telegraph station when he went to check the line. They come into town yet? No, but they will. Soon as the sun's up, they'll come. And this time... Boone trailed off, but Elias heard what he wasn't saying. This time it wouldn't be threats and posturing. This time Jace would come for blood. You humiliated him, Boone continued, made him look weak in front of his crew. He can't let that stand. Won't let it stand. Elias sat on the edge of his bed, suddenly feeling every one of his 63 years. How long we got? Couple hours, maybe. 3 if we're lucky. You evacuating people? Already started. Families with kids, anyone who can't fight, sending them to the Morrison Ranch 5 miles west. But most folks are staying. They think... Boone stopped, rubbed his face. They think you'll save them again. I'm not a miracle worker. Tell them that. They watched you face down 5 guns yesterday. They think you're bulletproof. I'm not. I know. But try convincing a town that just found its hero. Boone sat down on the only chair in the room, heavily. I need you to understand something, Elias. This is going to be bad. Jace isn't coming to talk. He's coming to make an example of you, of me, of anyone who stood against him. And I got maybe 4 men in this town who can shoot straight, and 2 of them are drunk half the time. So what are you asking me? I'm asking if you're really the Iron Judge, if those stories are true. Because if they're not, if you just got lucky yesterday, then we need to know now so we can run. Elias looked at his hands. Old hands, scarred and weathered. Hands that had held guns and reins and nothing else for most of his life. The stories are true enough. That's not an answer. It's the only one I got. Yeah, I was fast once. Fast enough to put down men who needed putting down. But that was 20 years ago, and 20 years is a long time for a body to remember. But you could do it again if you had to. Could he? Elias wasn't sure. Yesterday had been adrenaline and muscle memory and luck. He hadn't actually fired his gun, hadn't tested whether his hands still had the speed, whether his eyes could still track targets, whether his nerve would hold when bullets started flying. I don't know, he said honestly. Won't know until it happens. Boone nodded like he'd expected that answer. Well, we're about to find out. He stood. I'm positioning men on the rooftops. Not much, but something. You should get ready. I am ready. No, you're not. You're sitting in your underwear talking to me. Get dressed, check your gun, and for Christ's sake, eat something. You look like hell. Boone left. Elias sat in the dark for another minute, listening to the town wake up around him. Voices, movement, the sound of fear spreading like water through cracks. Then he dressed, checked his gun like Boone said, and went downstairs. Mrs. Chen had coffee ready. She poured him a cup without speaking, her face tight with worry. You should leave, Elias told her. This is my house. Won't be your house if it burns down with you in it. Then I'll die in my house, better than dying on the road. She set a plate of eggs in front of him. Eat. You'll need your strength. The eggs tasted like paste, but he forced them down. Around him, the boarding house was emptying, the few other tenants grabbing their belongings and fleeing, smart people, sensible people, the kind who lived long lives by knowing when to run. Elias finished his coffee and walked to the stable. Rust was awake, watching the door like he'd been expecting company. Elias went into the stall and checked the horse over. No injuries from yesterday, no signs of stress. The animal was calm as always, trusting in a way that made Elias's chest hurt. They're coming back, he said quietly, and this time it's going to get ugly, real ugly. Rust turned his head, pressed his nose against Elias's shoulder. Warm breath, steady presence. 18 years of partnership condensed into that simple gesture. I need you to trust me today, Elias continued. Need you to do what I ask, when I ask it, without question. Can you do that? The horse's ear flicked. Might have been yes, might have been just a fly. But Elias chose to believe it was yes. He saddled Rust, moving slow and careful, checking every strap and buckle. The horse stood patient, understanding in some animal way that today was different. Today mattered. When he led Rust out into the street, the sun was just touching the eastern ridge. Red Hollow looked like a town preparing for war, shutters closed, doors barred, men with rifles on rooftops. Sheriff Boone was in the middle of the street, organizing what passed for a defense. You're bringing the horse? Boone asked. He's part of this. He's a target. So am I. At least together we got a chance. Boone looked like he wanted to argue, but footsteps behind him made him turn. It was Garrett, running from the telegraph station, out of breath. They're moving, Garrett gasped. Coming in from the east road, all 5 spread out like a skirmish line. How long? 10 minutes, maybe less, Boone swore. Everyone to positions. And remember, nobody fires until I give the word. We might still talk our way out of this. The men on the rooftops shifted, nervous. Elias could see their faces, pale, sweating, hands tight on their rifles. Farmers and shopkeepers playing soldier. They'd probably never shot at a person in their lives. Boone, Elias said quietly. The sheriff turned. Keep your men out of this. Whatever happens, keep them out of it. They need to defend their town. They need to stay alive. Jace wants me. Let him have his shot. And if he kills you, then you run. Take everyone and run, because if I can't stop them, your 4 shooters sure as hell can't. Boone's jaw worked. I can't just let you face them alone. Yes, you can. Because if you don't,
A lot of good people are going to die today for no reason except pride. They stared at each other, old lawman to older lawman, both knowing the truth neither wanted to say. This was a fight that could only end one way, and adding bodies wouldn't change the ending, just make it bloodier.
"All right," Boone finally said. "We stay back, but if things go sideways, they won't. You don't know that." "No, but I'm betting my life on it, so I better be right." Elias walked Russ to the center of the street, the exact spot where he'd stood yesterday. The sun was higher now, burning off the morning chill, casting long shadows across the empty town. He could hear his heartbeat in his ears, steady and slow, could feel the weight of his gun against his hip, familiar as breathing. The minutes crawled. Somewhere a rooster crowed, confused by the silence. A dog barked once, then went quiet. The wind picked up, moving dust in lazy spirals. Then he heard them. Hoofbeats. 5 horses, moving at a walk. The sound getting louder, closer, until Elias could see them emerging from the heat shimmer at the edge of town. Jace rode in front, flanked by Pike and Monroe. The other 2 spread wide, creating a line. They stopped 50 yards out, and for a moment nobody moved. Just 2 forces facing each other across empty ground, waiting to see who'd blink first. Jace dismounted. His crew followed. They left their horses and walked forward, slow and deliberate, hands near their guns. When they were 30 yards out, Jace stopped. He looked different than yesterday, harder, meaner. The humiliation had burned away the swagger, left something colder underneath. "Morning, Elias," he called. His voice was flat, empty of the theatrical charm from before. "Morning. Nice day." "Was. You know why we're here?" "I got a guess." Jace smiled, but it was nothing like his smile from yesterday. This one was a predator's smile, all teeth and hunger. "I've been thinking all night about what you did, how you made me look, how you embarrassed me in front of my men, in front of this whole damn town." "You embarrassed yourself." "Maybe, but that doesn't change what happens now." Jace's hand drifted to his gun. "See, I got a reputation to uphold. Can't have people thinking Jace Cutter backs down from old men. Can't have them thinking I'm scared. You should be scared. Of you, the great Iron Judge?" Jace spat in the dust. "Yesterday you got lucky. You moved fast, caught us by surprise. But today? Today we're ready. Today you're just an old man with shaky hands and bad knees." Behind Jace, his crew was fanning out, creating angles of fire. Not subtle about it. They wanted Elias to see, wanted him to understand the geometry of what was coming. "Last chance," Elias said. "Ride out. Live to see tomorrow." "No, last chance for you. Draw that gun and we'll make it quick. Don't, and we'll make it slow. Either way, you die today. Either way, this town learns what happens when you cross Jace Cutter." Elias felt rust shift beside him. The horse's ears were back, body tense. Animals knew when violence was coming, knew it in their bones. "You're going to kill the horse too, aren't you?" Elias asked. "Oh yes. Slowly. Want you to watch that before you go." And just like that, something settled in Elias, something cold and final. He'd tried to avoid this, tried to walk away, tried to give Jason out, but some men couldn't take an out. Some men had to push until they found the edge and fell off. "Okay," Elias said quietly. "Okay what?" "Okay, we do this. But when it's over, when you're lying in the dirt bleeding out, I want you to remember I gave you a choice." Jace laughed. "Big words for a dead man. Pike, you ready?" Pike had moved around to Elias's left, creating a crossfire. He nodded, hand on his gun. "Monroe?" Monroe looked sick, but he nodded too. The other 2, Elias didn't know their names, were positioned right and rear. 5 angles, 5 guns. Professional setup. If Elias had been a normal man, he'd already be dead. "On 3, Jace said. 1. Elias's hand hung loose at his side. His breathing slowed. Time seemed to stretch, each second becoming elastic, infinite. 2. He could see everything with perfect clarity. The beat of sweat on Jace's temple, the tremor in Pike's hand, the way Monroe's eyes kept darting to rust like he couldn't quite believe they were really doing this. Could see the men on the rooftops frozen, watching. could see Boone standing in front of his office, hand on his gun, face twisted with helpless rage. 3. 5 guns cleared leather, and Elias moved. Not like an old man, not like someone who'd spent 20 years trying to forget how. He moved like water, like lightning, like the Iron Judge who'd put down 100 men and walked away from all of them. His draw was perfect, smooth as silk, faster than thought. The gun came up, the hammer cocked, the barrel aligned, all in the space between heartbeats. He fired at Pike first. Center mass, no hesitation. The skinny outlaw went down with a hole in his chest, gun falling from nerveless fingers. Second shot, Monroe. The fat man was still drawing when the bullet took him in the shoulder, spinning him around, his gun discharging into the dirt. Third shot, the man to the right. Elias didn't know his name, didn't need to, just a target, just geometry. The bullet caught him in the gut, dropped him screaming, all of this in less than 2 seconds. But Jace and the fifth man, a dark-haired kid with a mustache, they got their shots off. Elias heard the bullets, felt one tug at his coat sleeve, felt another whistle past his ear close enough to feel the heat. And then Rust moved. The horse didn't panic, didn't bolt. Instead, he lunged at the dark-haired kid, 800 pounds of muscle and rage. His shoulder hit the outlaw like a battering ram, sending the man flying. The kid's gun went off as he fell, the shot going wild into the sky. Rust reared, hooves flashing down. The kid tried to roll away but wasn't fast enough. A hoof caught him in the ribs with a crack Elias heard from 20 feet away. The kid went still. Jace was backing up, eyes wide with shock and terror. His gun was empty. He'd fired all his shots and missed. Now he was reaching for his second gun, hands shaking so bad he could barely grip it. "Don't," Elias said. Jace froze. His second gun was halfway out of its holster. "Please," Jace whispered. "Please don't." Elias walked forward, gun still aimed at Jace's chest. The young outlaw looked nothing like the cocky boy from yesterday. He looked like what he was, a kid in over his head, facing consequences he'd never imagined. "Drop it," Elias said. Jace's second gun hit the dirt. "Kick it away." Jace did, his whole body shaking now. Behind Elias, men were emerging from buildings, climbing down from rooftops. Boone was running over, shotgun ready. But Elias kept his focus on Jace. "You were going to kill my horse," Elias said quietly. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I wasn't thinking. I was just... You were going to make me watch while you did it." "Slow," you said. "Please, I'll leave. I'll never come back. I'll... Get on your knees." Jace dropped like his strings had been cut. Tears were streaming down his face now, snot running from his nose. The humiliation from yesterday was nothing compared to this. Elias pressed the gun barrel against Jace's forehead. The young man whimpered. "You feel that?" Elias asked. "Yes." "That's how you made that rancher feel. That's how you made everyone in this town feel. Powerless, scared, broken. I'm sorry." "No, you're not. You're scared. There's a difference." Boone arrived, breathing hard. "Elias, don't." "Why not? He would have killed me. Killed the horse. Probably would have burned half the town just to make a point." "Because you're better than him." "Am I?" Elias kept the gun pressed against Jace's forehead. His finger was on the trigger. One squeeze, that's all it would take. One squeeze, and Jace Cutter would stop being a problem forever. But Elias's hand was steady, not shaking like it should be, not trembling with adrenaline or rage, just steady, cold, ready. And that scared him more than anything. "Elias," Boone said again. "Look at me." Elias didn't move. "Look at me," Boone repeated. "Please." Slowly Elias turned his head. Boone's face was pale but determined. "You shoot him now, you become what he is. You become a killer, not a defender, not a hero, just a man who executes people in the street. He deserves it. Maybe. But you don't deserve to carry it. You've carried enough." The words hit something in Elias, something deep and buried. He looked at Jace, still on his knees, still crying, looked at Pike, dead in the dirt, looked at Monroe, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Looked at the other two, one dead from Rust's hooves, one dying from the gut shot. 4 bodies. Maybe 5. All because a young fool couldn't walk away from a fight. All because Elias couldn't either. He lowered his gun. Jace sagged, sobbing with relief. "Get up," Elias said. Jace struggled to his feet, legs barely holding him. "You're going to leave now. You're going to take whatever's left of your crew and you're going to ride out. And if I ever hear about you threatening another town, another family, another person who can't defend themselves, I will find you. I will track you down wherever you are, and I will put a bullet in you. Do you understand?" "Yes. Yes, I understand." "Say it." "I'll leave. I'll never come back. I'll never—" His voice broke. "I'll never hurt anyone again." "You're lying. But you'll remember this. You'll remember how it felt to be on your knees begging for your life. And maybe, just maybe, that'll be enough to make you think twice next time." Elias stepped back. Boone moved in with handcuffs. "Wait," Jace said. "You're arresting me? Did you think you'd just ride off?" Boone snapped the cuffs on. "You killed a man in my town. Tried to kill more. You're going to trial." "But he said—" "I said I wouldn't kill you," Elias interrupted. "Didn't say you wouldn't face justice." He turned away, walked back to Rust. The horse was standing over the dark-haired kid's body, snorting. There was blood on his hooves. "Easy," Elias murmured, running his hand along Rust's neck. "Easy, boy. It's over." But it wasn't over. Not really. The adrenaline was crashing now, leaving Elias hollow and shaking. His hands trembled as he holstered his gun. His knees felt like water. He leaned against Rust, using the horse to stay upright. Around him, the town was coming back to life. People emerging from hiding, gathering around the bodies, talking in shocked whispers. Boone was organizing men to help with the wounded, to move the dead, to clean up the mess. Garrett appeared at Elias's elbow. "You okay?" "No." "That was the fastest thing I ever saw. Faster than redemption, faster than anything." "Doesn't feel fast. Feels like I'm 100 years old." "You saved us again." "I killed 3 men. 3 men who were trying to kill you. That's not murder, that's survival." Elias didn't answer. He watched Boone drag Jace toward the jail, watched men carry Pike's body toward the undertaker, watched Monroe stumble along with his shoulder bleeding through his shirt. 3 dead. 1 wounded. 1 arrested. All in less than 10 seconds. The Iron Judge's work, quick, efficient, brutal. And Elias hated every second of it. Mrs. Chen found him an hour later, still standing with Rust, still trying to make his hands stop shaking. "You need to sit down," she said. "I need to leave." "Not yet. Town wants to thank you." "I don't want thanks. I want—" He stopped, not sure how to finish. What did he want? To go back to being anonymous? To forget the feeling of his gun bucking in his hand? To unsee the look on Pike's face when the bullet hit? "You want it to be different," Mrs. Chen said quietly. "But it's not. This is what happened, and you have to live with it. I've been living with it for 20 years. Thought I was done. Nobody's ever done. We just get better at carrying it." She led him back to the boarding house, sat him down on the porch, brought him whiskey he didn't want but drank anyway. The liquor burned going down, settled hot in his stomach. Didn't make him feel better, but it made him feel something other than numb. Boone came by around noon. "Monroe's going to live," he reported. "The other one, kid named Travis, he's not. Rust broke most of his ribs. He's choking on his own blood." "I'm sorry." "Don't be." He made his choice. Boone sat down, looking exhausted. "Jace is in a cell. I sent a telegram to the territorial marshal. They'll send someone to pick him up, probably in a week or so. And until then, he sits in my jail and thinks about his life choices." Boone looked at Elias. "You really would have killed him, wouldn't you, if I hadn't stopped you?" "I don't know. Maybe." "That scares you?" "Yeah." "Good. Should scare you. Day you stop being scared of that is the day you become what he is." They sat in silence for a while. Down the street, men were scrubbing blood off the dirt, trying to erase the evidence of the morning's violence. Like if they cleaned hard enough, it would be like it never happened. "The town council wants to offer you a job," Boone said. "What kind of job?" "Deputy. Maybe sheriff if I retire. They want you to stay, make sure nothing like this happens again." "I'm not staying." "I told them you'd say that." "Then why mention it?" "Because I had to ask. Because they're scared. and you make them feel safe, even if that feeling's an illusion. Elias looked at his hands, still shaking slightly, though less than before. I can't protect them. Can't protect anyone. Today I got lucky. Next time maybe I don't. Next time maybe I'm the one in the dirt. That's true for everyone. Yeah, but everyone doesn't carry what I carry. Everyone doesn't have the reputation, the history, the weight of all those ghosts. Boone nodded slowly. Carson's Bend. Among others. Want to tell me about it? No. Fair enough. Boone stood, stretched. I'll tell the council you declined. They won't like it, but they'll understand. Eventually. He left. Elias stayed on the porch, watching the afternoon shadows lengthen, watching Red Hollow try to return to normal. But normal was gone. The town had changed, and Elias had changed it, and there was no going back to the way things were before Jace Cutter rode in looking for trouble. That night, Elias couldn't sleep. He kept seeing the moment, the draw, the shots, the bodies falling, kept hearing Pike's gasp as the bullet hit, kept feeling the weight of the gun in his hand. Around midnight, he gave up and went to the stable. Rust was awake, like he'd been waiting. Elias sat down in the straw beside the horse, leaned back against the stall wall. We did something today, he said quietly. Something I swore I'd never do again. And you know the worst part? It felt right. In the moment, it felt like the only thing that made sense. Rust lowered his head, resting his muzzle on Elias's shoulder. Heavy, warm, solid. I'm proud of you, Elias continued. What you did. Moving like that, protecting me. That was something. You saved my life, again. He stroked the horse's nose. But I'm also sorry. Sorry I put you in that position. Sorry you had to hurt someone. I know that's not who you are. The horse breathed, slow and steady. We should leave tomorrow. Pack up, ride out, find somewhere quiet where nobody knows the name Iron Judge. Somewhere we can just be. But even as he said it, Elias knew he wouldn't. Couldn't. Not yet. Because tomorrow the town would wake up and they'd still be scared. They'd still need someone to make them feel safe, even if that safety was temporary, even if it was built on violence and old reflexes. He stayed in the stable until dawn, dozing fitfully against Rust's shoulder, dreaming fragments of the fight, waking with a start every time a gunshot echoed in his memory. When morning light filtered through the stable doors, he stood, stretched out the kinks in his back, and walked out into a new day. Red Hollow was quiet, almost peaceful, like yesterday's violence had been a nightmare that faded with sunrise. But the bloodstains in the street were real. The bodies at the Undertaker were real. The memory of how fast he'd moved, how easy it had been to kill, that was real too. And Elias would carry it, like he carried everything else. One more weight added to a load that never seemed to get lighter no matter how many miles he rode. The week that followed felt like living in someone else's skin. People looked at Elias different now, stepped aside when he walked down the street, tipped their hats, murmured greetings, watched him with a mixture of awe and fear that made his stomach turn. The rancher whose daughter Jace had threatened brought Elias a chicken. Mrs. Patterson from the general store insisted he take a new shirt, wouldn't accept payment. Even the kids stopped playing when he passed, going quiet until he was out of sight. He hated it. You're a celebrity, Mrs. Chen said one evening, watching him pick at his dinner. I'm a killer. You're a protector. There's a difference. Is there? Elias pushed his plate away. 3 men are dead because of me. 3 men are dead because they tried to murder you in the street. That's on them, not you. But it didn't feel that way. At night, when sleep finally came, Elias saw their faces. Pike's shock as the bullet hit. Monroe screaming with his shattered shoulder. The dark-haired kid, Travis, crushed under Rust's hooves, drowning in his own blood. He'd died 2 hours after the fight, and somehow that made it worse. 2 hours of pain and fear and knowing he wouldn't see another sunset. Elias had killed men before, more than he could count. But that was decades ago, when he'd been someone different. Someone who could file death away in a mental drawer and move on. Now the drawer was full, overflowing, and there was nowhere to put the new bodies except right there in front, where he'd see them every time he closed his eyes. On the 3rd day after the fight, Boone came to see him. Marshall's sending someone next week, the sheriff said, settling onto the porch beside Elias. To pick up Jace and take him to territorial court. Good. He's been asking to see you. Elias's head snapped up. What? Jace. He wants to talk to you. Been asking every day. Tell him no. I did, but he's persistent. Says he needs to say something before they take him away. Boone pulled out his pipe, packed it with tobacco. Personally, I think you should hear him out. Why? Because he's broken. Completely broken. And maybe hearing what he has to say will help you too. I don't need help. Boone lit his pipe, drew on it. Elias, I've been sheriff for 18 years, seen a lot of men after they killed someone. Some of them shake it off easy. Others, it eats them alive. You're in the second category. I'm fine. You're not eating, not sleeping. You jump every time a door slams. That's not fine, that's traumatized. Boone blew smoke into the afternoon air. Talk to the kid. Maybe it helps, maybe it doesn't. But at least you'll know you tried. Elias didn't answer for a long time. Finally, he said, Tomorrow. Tomorrow what? I'll see him tomorrow. Boone nodded, stood, walked away trailing pipe smoke. That night, Elias sat with Rust in the stable, trying to make sense of everything. The horse stood patient as always, a solid presence in a world that felt increasingly unsteady. He wants to talk, Elias said. The boy, Jace, don't know what he could possibly have to say that I'd want to hear. Rust's tail swished, chasing flies. Maybe Boone's right. Maybe hearing him out would help, or maybe it'll just make things worse. Elias leaned against the horse's shoulder. I keep thinking about Carson's Bend, about how that started the same way. Me thinking I could control the violence, thinking I could stop it before it went too far. And then he trailed off. Carson's Bend was a wound that never healed, a scar that ran so deep it touched bone. He'd spent 20 years trying not to think about it, but here it was again, fresh as yesterday. Town burned, he finally said. 14 people dead, including a woman and her 2 kids. And I was supposed to stop it, was supposed to protect them. But I was too slow, too late, too focused on the wrong threat. His voice cracked. So, yeah, maybe that's why I didn't kill Jace, because I've seen what happens when you let vengeance drive you. Seen what it costs. Russ turned his head, regarded Elias with one large, understanding eye. You think I'm making sense? Elias asked. The horse snorted softly. Yeah, me neither. The next morning, Elias walked to the jail. It was a small building, barely bigger than a shed, with 2 cells and a desk where Boone spent his days doing paperwork and pretending to be busy. Jace was in the back cell, sitting on a cot that looked like it had seen better days. He looked up when Elias entered, and the change was startling. The cocky young outlaw was gone. In his place was a hollow-eyed kid who looked like he'd aged 10 years in a week. You came, Jace said. Elias didn't sit, just stood on the other side of the bars, arms crossed. Boone said you wanted to talk. Yeah, Jace stood, moved closer to the bars. I wanted to say I'm sorry. For what? For everything. For threatening you, for going after your horse, for coming back with my crew, for... His voice broke. For getting Pike and Travis killed. They made their own choices. No, they followed me. They trusted me to keep them safe, and I got them killed because I was too proud to walk away. Jace's hands gripped the bars. I can't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I see them. See Pike going down. See Travis getting crushed. Hear Monroe screaming. Welcome to the club. How do you live with it? How do you... Jace searched for words. How do you keep going when you know you got people killed? Elias was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, You don't live with it. You just carry it. Every day, every hour. It doesn't get lighter, doesn't get easier. You just get stronger at carrying it. That's not very comforting. It's not meant to be. You asked an honest question, I gave you an honest answer. Elias moved closer to the bars. What happened to you, Jace? What made you think this life was worth living? Jace slumped back down on the cot. My daddy died when I was 12. Stroke. Left us with nothing, no money, no property, just debts. Mama tried to keep us afloat, but it wasn't enough. I watched her work herself to death over 5 years. Literally work herself to death. She collapsed in a factory and never woke up. I'm sorry. After that, I was alone. 17 years old, no family, no prospects. Met Pike at a saloon. He was working tables, making nothing. We started running cons, small stuff at first. Then we met Monroe and the others, and the cons got bigger, turned into robberies. Robberies turned into, he gestured vaguely. This. And you thought terrorizing towns would make up for what you lost? I thought being feared meant I'd never be helpless again. Thought if people were scared of me, I'd be safe. Jace laughed bitterly. Stupid, right? Not stupid, just wrong. Elias sat down on the floor, back against the wall opposite the cell. His knees protested, but he ignored them. Fear doesn't make you safe, it just makes you alone. And alone is the most dangerous thing you can be. Is that what you are? Alone? I got a horse. That's more than some people get. But no people, no friends, no family. Had those once. Lost them. How? Elias closed his eyes. Carson's Bend. Town I was protecting. There was a gang, bigger than yours, meaner. I thought I could handle them. Thought I was fast enough, smart enough, tough enough. I was wrong. They burned the town, killed everyone I was supposed to protect. I got out, barely. Everyone else, he opened his eyes. Everyone else died screaming. The cell was quiet. Jace had gone pale. After that, Elias continued, I couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't be the Iron Judge. Couldn't carry the weight of all those lives depending on me. So I walked away. Changed my name, rode to places where nobody knew me, tried to forget. He looked at Jace. But you never forget. You just pretend better. Is that why you didn't kill me when you had me on my knees? Part of it. Mostly, though, I didn't kill you because I'm tired. Tired of death, tired of violence, tired of being the man who ends things with a gun. You deserve to die, probably. But I didn't deserve to be the one who killed you. Jace nodded slowly. The marshal's coming for me in 3 days. They'll take me to trial, probably hang me. Probably. You think I deserve that? Elias considered. I think you made choices that led you here. Whether you deserve hanging, that's not for me to say. But you killed a man in Montana. Boone found the wanted poster. You robbed trains in Colorado. You terrorized families from here to the territories. Those things have consequences. I know, Jace's voice dropped to a whisper. I'm scared. You should be. That all you got? You should be scared? What do you want me to say? That it'll be okay? That you'll be fine? You won't. You're going to stand trial for murder and robbery and a dozen other things, and they're going to find you guilty, and they're going to hang you. That's the truth. I can't make it softer just because you don't like it. Jace was crying now, silent tears running down his face. I don't want to die. Nobody does. But we don't always get a choice. Did you give Pike a choice? Did you give Travis a choice? The words hit like a fist. Elias stood, anger flashing hot in his chest. They drew on me. They came back for a second try after I gave them every chance to walk away. Don't you dare try to put their blood on my hands. Isn't it, though? You're faster than anyone. You could have shot their guns out of their hands, winged them, anything but kill shots. You ever fired a gun in a real fight? Elias asked, voice low and dangerous. No. Then shut up about things you don't understand. In a gunfight, you don't aim for hands or shoulders. You aim center mass because it's the biggest target and because if you miss, you die. That's the reality. That's what it means to fight for your life. So you had no choice. I had the choice they gave me, which was die or survive. I chose survive. If that makes me a murderer in your eyes, I don't care. I'm still breathing and they're not. And that's how it goes. Jace wiped his face. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said that. No, you shouldn't have. Elias turned to leave. Wait. He stopped. Thank you, Jace said, for not killing me, for giving me this chance, even if it's just a few more days. I know I don't deserve it, but thank you. Elias didn't turn around. Use the time you got left to make peace with what you did. Write letters to the families you hurt. Tell the truth at your trial. Die with whatever dignity you can scrape together. That's the only advice I got." He left the jail without looking back. Outside, the sun was bright and hot, the kind of heat that made the air shimmer. Boone was sitting on a bench, whittling something that might have been a horse or might have been a dog, hard to tell. "How'd it go?" Boone asked. "About like you'd expect." "He get to you?" "Little bit." "Good. Means you're still human." Boone blew shavings off his carving. "I talked to the territorial judge yesterday. They're going to want you to testify." "I figured." "You okay with that?" "Do I have a choice?" "Not really, but I thought I'd ask." Elias sat down beside him, suddenly exhausted. "What happens to Monroe?" "He's being charged as an accessory. Probably get 10 years in territorial prison. He'll live, which is more than the others got." "He mentioned his family?" "His wife. Says she's in Kansas City with their daughters. I sent a telegram, let her know what happened. She responded yesterday." Boone pulled a folded paper from his pocket. "You want to read it?" Elias took the telegram, unfolded it. The message was short. "Tell him we're done. Don't come home." Signed with just initials. "Damn," Elias said quietly. "Yeah. Man loses his freedom and his family in the same week. That's a hard fall." "He earned it." "Doesn't make it less hard." They sat in silence for a while, watching Red Hollow move around them. The town was getting back to normal, or what passed for normal. Shops open, people talking, kids playing in the street. Like the violence had been a storm that passed, leaving destruction but also renewal. "I need to tell you something," Boone said eventually. "What's that?" "I'm retiring. End of the month." Elias turned to look at him. "Why?" "Because I'm 61 years old and I'm tired. Tired of violence, tired of responsibility, tired of watching young men throw their lives away for nothing." Boone kept carving, not meeting Elias's eyes. "Whole thing with Jace and his crew, it showed me I'm not fast enough anymore, not strong enough. If you hadn't been here, this town would have burned. You don't know that." "Yes, I do, and so do you." Boone finally looked up. "I'm offering you the badge. For real this time." "I already said no." "That was before. Things are different now." "How?" "Before you hadn't proven yourself. Now you have. The town trusts you. Hell, they worship you. You could keep them safe in a way I never could." Elias shook his head. "I'm not staying, Boone. Soon as the trial's over, I'm riding out." "Where to?" "Don't know. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere nobody knows the name Iron Judge." "That place doesn't exist, not anymore. What you did here, it's going to spread. People talk. Stories travel. In a year, everyone from here to California will know about the old gunfighter who faced down 5 men and walked away clean." "Then I'll ride further." "You can't outrun a legend." "I can try." Boone went back to his carving. "You're a stubborn old bastard, you know that?" "Been told once or twice." "What about the horse?" "What about him?" "He's getting old too. You keep dragging him from town to town, he's going to die on some dusty trail in the middle of nowhere. Is that what you want for him?" The question hit harder than Elias expected. He thought about Rust, 18 years old, joints getting stiff, moving slower every year. The horse had given everything, asked for nothing, stayed loyal when any sensible animal would have wandered off. And Elias's thanks was to drag him through endless miles of nothing, chasing a peace that didn't exist. "I don't know what I want," Elias admitted. "Then stay. For a while at least. Let Rust rest. Let yourself rest. See if maybe this place could be home." "I don't do home." "You did once. Before Carson's Bend." "That's different." "How?" "Because I failed them. Everyone who depended on me, I let them down. I won't make that mistake again." "So you're just going to run forever? Keep moving until you drop dead on some trail where nobody will find you?" "If that's what it takes." Boone was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "My wife died 3 years ago. Cancer. Took 6 months from diagnosis to the end. Worst 6 months of my life." Elias didn't know what to say to that, so he stayed quiet. "Before she died," Boone continued, "she made me promise something. Made me promise I'd keep living, not just existing, but really living. finding joy, making connections, being part of something bigger than myself. He set down his carving. I've been breaking that promise for 3 years, hiding behind this badge, pretending work is the same as life. But it's not. And watching how you carry your grief, your guilt, your fear, it's like looking in a mirror. And I don't like what I see. What's your point? My point is we're both too old and too tired to keep running from ourselves. Maybe it's time we stopped. And do what? Live. Really live. Find peace before we're too dead to enjoy it. Elias stood. His knees popped. His back ached, and he felt every one of his 63 years pressing down on him. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Elias walked back to the boarding house. Mrs. Chen was on the porch, shelling peas into a bowl. You look troubled, she said. Boone offered me the sheriff job again. You going to take it? No. Why not? Because I can't protect people. Every time I try, they end up dead. Mrs. Chen's hands didn't stop moving, mechanically shelling peas with practiced efficiency. My husband used to say something. The man who never fails is the man who never tries. You failed in Carson's Bend. That's true. But you succeeded here. Which one defines you? The failure. Always the failure. That's your choice. Or you can let one bad day 20 years ago destroy every good day after. Or you can accept that you're human and humans fail sometimes. 14 people died. And how many have you saved? In all the years before Carson's Bend, how many lives did you protect? Elias didn't answer. Hundreds? Mrs. Chen pressed. Thousands? But those don't count, right? Only the ones you lost. Those are the ones that matter. They all matter, the saved and the lost. But you only carry the lost, and that's not balance, that's self-punishment. She finished with the peas, stood, and went inside without another word. Elias sat on the porch and watched the afternoon fade into evening, watched the sun paint the western sky in shades of orange and red, watched Red Hollow settle into night, peaceful and quiet, unaware of the war being fought inside one old man's head. That night, he dreamed of Carson's Bend again. But this time it was different. This time, when the town burned, he didn't run. He stayed, he fought, he saved some of them. Not all, never all, but some. And when the fire finally died and the smoke cleared, those survivors looked at him, not with blame, but with gratitude. He woke before dawn, covered in sweat, heart racing. It was just a dream. It didn't change anything. Carson's Bend still burned, those people still died, and he was still the man who failed to stop it. But maybe Mrs. Chen was right. Maybe the people he saved mattered as much as the ones he lost. Maybe. 3 days later, the territorial marshal arrived. He was a hard-faced man named Coleman, who looked like he'd seen everything and been impressed by none of it. He took custody of Jace without ceremony, chained him up in a wagon, and prepared to leave. Elias watched from the boarding house porch. He'd already given his statement to Coleman, already agreed to testify if needed. Now there was nothing to do but watch Jace Cutter disappear from his life, probably forever. But as the wagon started to roll, Jace looked back. Their eyes met across the distance, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness exactly, but understanding. Two men who'd made choices and lived with consequences. Two men who'd looked death in the face and found it staring back. Then the wagon turned the corner and Jace was gone. Boone appeared beside Elias. That's that then. Yeah. You sticking around for a while? Elias thought about it. Thought about Rust, getting older, deserving rest. Thought about the road, endless and empty. Thought about Carson's Bend and Red Hollow and all the towns in between. Maybe a while, he said. Just until Rust is ready to ride again. And then? Then we'll see. Boone smiled. I'll take it. That evening, Elias went to the stable. Rust was dozing in his stall, peaceful in the fading light. Elias sat down in the straw beside the horse and just breathed. We're staying for a bit, he said quietly, just until you're rested. Then we move on, find somewhere new, somewhere quiet. Rust's ear twitched. I know I keep saying that, keep promising we'll find peace, but maybe peace isn't a place. Maybe it's a choice. Maybe it's choosing to stop running, stop hiding, stop punishing ourselves for things we can't change. The horse lowered his head, resting it on Elias's shoulder. Heavy, warm, trusting. Or maybe I'm just an old fool talking to a horse, Elias said. Either way, we're in this together. Always have been. Always will be. They sat like that until full dark, man and horse, partners who'd seen too much and survived anyway, finding comfort in the simple fact of each other's presence. And for the first time in longer than he could remember, Elias felt something like peace. Not the kind that lasts forever. Not the kind that erases the past or promises a perfect future. Just the kind that exists in quiet moments between storms. The kind worth holding on to. The maybe a while turned into a month. Then 2. Then 3. Elias told himself he was staying for Rust's sake. The horse needed rest, needed good food, needed time to recover from years of hard traveling. That was true enough. But it wasn't the whole truth, and Elias knew it. The whole truth was that Red Hollow had gotten under his skin. Not the hero worship, that still made him uncomfortable, but the rhythms of the place. The way Mrs. Chen brought him coffee every morning without being asked. The way kids waved at him on the street, unafraid. The way Sheriff Boone stopped by most evenings just to sit and talk about nothing important. It felt like something Elias had given up on having. It felt like belonging. Boone officially retired at the end of September. The town threw him a party at the saloon, which the old sheriff endured with good grace and too much whiskey. When they asked him to say a few words, he stood unsteadily and pointed at Elias. That man there saved this town. There. Not me. I was ready to roll over and let Jace Cutter have his way. But Elias stood up. So if you're grateful for anything, be grateful for him. The crowd erupted in applause. Elias wanted to sink through the floor. After the party, walking back to the boarding house under stars, Boone said, I meant what I said in there. You were drunk. Doesn't make it less true. Boone stopped, swaying slightly. You know what my biggest regret is? What? That I never stood up like you did. Never put myself on the line. I played it safe my whole career, enforced the small laws, avoid the big troubles, survive until retirement. And I did survive. But I never really lived. Not like you. I got people killed, Boone. You also saved people, including this whole town. When are you going to let yourself accept that? Elias didn't have an answer. The new sheriff was a young man named Porter, transferred in from a larger town up north. He was competent, serious, and terrified of Elias. Every time they crossed paths, Porter would nod respectfully and hurry on his way, like he was afraid of saying the wrong thing to a legend. You make him nervous, Mrs. Chen observed one morning. I make everyone nervous. Not me. You're different. How so? You see me as I am, not as some story. She smiled. And what are you, Elias Crow? Just an old man trying to figure out what comes next. Any progress on that? Not much. But that wasn't entirely true. Because slowly, quietly, Elias was building something in Red Hollow. Not a reputation, he already had that. Something smaller and more important, a life. He started helping Boone with his woodworking. The old sheriff had a workshop behind his small house, full of half-finished projects. Together they'd spend afternoons making tables, chairs, cabinets. Nothing fancy, but solid work that felt good in the hands. You ever do this before? Boone asked one day, watching Elias plane a board smooth. Not really, but my daddy was a carpenter. I remember watching him work when I was young. He teach you anything? Measure twice, cut once. Only lesson I remember. Good lesson. They worked in comfortable silence, the sound of tools on wood filling the space where words might have gone. It was peaceful in a way Elias hadn't experienced in decades. No violence, no threat, just creation instead of destruction. He also started spending time at the stable, helping the hands with the difficult horses. Turned out years with Rust had taught him things about animal behavior most people never learned. How to read a horse's mood from the set of its ears. How to calm a spooked animal with voice and touch. How to train without breaking spirit. The stable owner, a gruff man named Henderson, was skeptical at first. You sure you know what you're doing? No, but the horses seem to think I do. And they did. Even the meanest, most stubborn animals settled around Elias. He had a way of moving that didn't threaten, a patience that couldn't be rushed. Within a month, Henderson was asking his advice on everything. "You ever think about buying some land?" Henderson asked one afternoon. "Setting up your own operation?" "With what money?" "Town would chip in. They'd do anything for you." "That's exactly why I can't ask." But the idea stuck with him. Land. A place to call his own. Room for Russ to graze in peace. Maybe a small house, a workshop. A life that wasn't defined by running or hiding or the weight of old ghosts. It was a dangerous thought. Dangerous because it made him hope. Winter came early that year. Snow in November. Unusual for that part of the territory. Red Hollow hunkered down, and Elias found himself spending more time indoors. He'd sit in Mrs. Chen's parlor reading books from her small collection, or play chess with Boone, or just watch the snow fall and think about time passing. He was 64 now, old by any measure. His hands shook sometimes when he tried to hold small objects. His knees were bad enough that climbing stairs was a deliberate act. His eyesight was starting to blur at the edges. Nothing serious yet, but enough to notice. The Iron Judge was dying. Slowly, one ache at a time, he was becoming just Elias. And strangely, that didn't scare him the way it should have. One night in December, Mrs. Chen asked him about Carson's Bend. They were sitting by her fireplace, the wind howling outside, snow piling against the windows. She'd made tea, real tea from China, expensive and precious. The cup warmed Elias's hands. "You don't have to tell me if you don't want," she said, "but I think you need to tell someone. And I'm a good listener." Elias stared into the fire. He'd never told the whole story, not to anyone. Boone knew pieces. Garrett had witnessed the aftermath, but nobody knew everything. "It was supposed to be simple," he started. "Gang of rustlers hitting ranches around Carson's Bend. The town council hired me to stop them. I'd done it 100 times before in 100 other towns." Mrs. Chen sipped her tea, waiting. But this time was different. The gang's leader, man named Dutch Keller, he wasn't just a rustler. He was smart, patient. He knew I was coming, and he planned for it. Elias's hands tightened on his cup. "He hit the town while I was out chasing his men, set fires, killed anyone who resisted. By the time I got back, half the town was burning and people were dying in the streets." "What did you do?" "I tried to stop it, tried to put out fires, save who I could. But there were too many fires, too many people screaming. I was one man against an inferno. Dutch and his gang were long gone by the time I gave up. They got what they wanted, a reputation as the men who burned down a town and killed the Iron Judge's people." "But you survived." "Yeah, I survived. 14 people didn't, including Sarah Mitchell and her 2 kids. She'd been baking bread when the fire started. Her house went up fast. By the time I got there," he stopped, swallowing hard. "The door was barred from outside. Dutch had trapped them in there." Mrs. Chen's face was very still. "I broke down the door, but it was too late. The smoke had already... They were just lying there. The kids were maybe 5 and 7. Sarah was covering them with her body, like she thought she could protect them even at the end." Elias set down his tea. His hands were shaking. "I carried them out, all 3, laid them in the street with the other bodies, and then I left. Just got on my horse and rode away and never looked back." "Because you felt you'd failed them." "Because I had failed them. I was supposed to protect that town. That was my job. And I got outsmarted by a rustler with matches and a mean streak. One failure doesn't erase a lifetime of success. Tell that to Sarah Mitchell's kids." Mrs. Chen leaned forward. "Elias, listen to me. What happened in Carson's Bend was a tragedy. A terrible, awful tragedy. But it wasn't your fault. You can't be everywhere. You can't predict every move. You're one man, not some supernatural force. I should have been better, faster, smarter. You should have been human, which you were, which you are." She reached out, took his shaking hand in both of hers. "The question isn't whether you failed in Carson's Bend. You did. The question is whether that failure defines everything else you've ever done. Whether it erases all the people you saved, all the towns you protected, all the good you created. It does for me. Then you're a fool." Her voice was gentle but firm.
My husband died because he tried to stand up to bad men. Does that mean he was wrong to try? Does his failure erase the years he spent being good and kind and brave? That's different. It's exactly the same. You're punishing yourself for being human,
For not being perfect. But perfection doesn't exist, Elias. Not in this world. All we can do is try our best and accept that sometimes our best isn't enough. Elias pulled his hand away. I don't know how to do that. You start by forgiving yourself, by accepting that what happened wasn't entirely your fault, that you did everything you could with what you had. And if I can't, then you stay trapped in Carson's Bend forever and Dutch Keller wins, 20 years dead, and he still controls your life. The words hit like cold water. Elias had never thought of it that way, that by carrying this guilt, this shame, he was letting Dutch win, letting that bastard rustler dictate how he lived, where he went, who he allowed himself to be. I don't want that, Elias said quietly. Then let it go. Not forget, you'll never forget. But let go of the idea that you could have stopped it. Let go of the belief that one failure defines you. Let go and start living the life you still have left. That night, Elias lay awake for hours. He thought about Sarah Mitchell and her kids, thought about the fire, the screaming, the smell of smoke and burning flesh. Thought about all the nights he'd replayed those moments, searching for the move he should have made, the decision that would have changed everything. And then he thought about Red Hollow, about Jace Cutter and his crew, about the choice to show mercy instead of vengeance, about the people he'd saved instead of the ones he couldn't. Maybe Mrs. Chen was right. Maybe he'd been letting one day define 20 years of life. Maybe it was time to stop. Spring came late, but when it arrived gloriously. The snow melted, wildflowers exploded across the hills, and Red Hollow came back to life with the kind of energy that only comes after a hard winter. Elias turned 65 in April. Mrs. Chen made him a cake, which embarrassed him more than pleased him, but he ate it anyway. Boone gave him a knife he'd carved the handle for himself. Garrett brought him tobacco. Even Sheriff Porter stopped by with an awkward handshake and best wishes. "You're part of this town now," Boone said as they sat on the boarding house porch that evening. "Whether you like it or not." "I'm starting to like it." "Good. Because we like having you here." "Even though I'm useless most days?" "You're not useless. You're just old. There's a difference." They watched the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Rust was in the paddock behind the stable, grazing peacefully. The horse was 19 now, moving slower than ever, but still solid. Still here. "I've been thinking," Elias said. "About?" "Buying some land, like Henderson suggested. Maybe settle down proper, build something that lasts." Boone smiled. "About damn time." "Don't get excited. I'm just thinking about it." "You've been thinking about it for months. At some point, thinking has to become doing." "I know. Just scared, I guess." "Of what?" "Of putting down roots and having them torn up. Of getting comfortable and losing everything again." "That's called living, Elias. Risk is part of it. You can't avoid pain by avoiding life." "I can try." "You can, but it's a lonely way to go." 2 weeks later, Elias bought 40 acres on the edge of town. It wasn't much. Scrubland mostly, with a creek running through one corner and a stand of cottonwood trees that provided shade. But it was his. The first thing he'd owned in 20 years besides his gun and the clothes on his back. The town helped him build. Henderson brought lumber. Boone and some others helped frame a small house, one room, barely bigger than a cabin, but solid. Mrs. Chen contributed furniture from her attic. Even Sheriff Porter showed up one afternoon with nails and a hammer, working alongside everyone else without a word. It took a month to finish. When it was done, Elias stood in the doorway and looked at what they'd created. A home. Simple, rough around the edges, but his. "You did good," Boone said, clapping him on the shoulder. "We did good. I couldn't have done this alone." "That's the point. You're not alone anymore." Elias moved in the next day. Rust got a small paddock with a lean-to for shelter, fresh water from the creek, and all the grazing he could want. The horse seemed pleased with the arrangement, settling in like he'd always known this was coming. That first night in his own house, Elias couldn't sleep. Not from worry or fear, but from something close to joy. He'd never thought he'd have this again. A place to belong, people who cared, a future that extended beyond the next town. The summer was quiet. Elias worked his land, built a better shelter for rust, planted a small garden that mostly died but taught him things for next year. He had dinner at Mrs. Chen's twice a week, played chess with Boone every Sunday, helped Henderson at the stable when needed. It was ordinary. Beautifully, perfectly ordinary. In August, he got a letter. It came via the territorial mail system, addressed in handwriting he didn't recognize. Inside was a single page. Mr. Crow, you don't know me, but I'm the wife of Monroe Jeffries. He's in territorial prison because of what happened in Red Hollow. I wanted you to know that he's been writing to me and our daughters, telling us what happened, taking responsibility for his choices. He says you showed him mercy when you could have killed him, and that mercy changed his life. He's been helping other prisoners learn to read and write. The warden says he's a model inmate. I don't know if you care about any of this, but I wanted you to know that what you did mattered. It saved more than just his life. It saved who he is. Thank you. Martha Jeffries. Elias read the letter 3 times. Then he folded it carefully and put it in his drawer with the few other things he considered important. Mercy had felt like weakness in the moment, felt like he was being soft, letting people who deserved punishment escape it. But maybe mercy wasn't about what people deserved. Maybe it was about what kind of person you chose to be. In October, word came that Jace Cutter had been hanged. The trial had been brief, too much evidence, too many witnesses. He'd been convicted on multiple counts and executed in the territorial capital. Elias felt something when he heard the news, but it wasn't satisfaction. It was just sadness. Sadness that a young man's life had come to that. Sadness that pride and anger and fear had driven him to choices that ended at a rope. You think he deserved it? Boone asked. I think he earned it. Deserving is different. How so? Deserving implies justice, some cosmic balance. Earning just means his choices led there. There's no karma in it, no righteousness, just cause and effect. That's a cold way to see the world. Maybe, but it's honest. Winter returned, harder than the year before. Snow piled deep, temperatures dropped low enough to freeze the creek. Elias spent long evenings by his fire, reading or carving wood, or just thinking about the strange path his life had taken. He was 65 years old. Most men his age were dead or dying. He was building furniture and tending a garden and planning for next spring like he had all the time in the world. But he didn't. Nobody did. The signs were small at first. Forgetting words mid-sentence, losing his balance more often, sleeping longer, waking more tired. He ignored them as long as he could, told himself it was just age, just winter, just life. But in January, he collapsed in his house. He woke to Boone's face hovering above him, concern written deep in every line. What happened? Elias asked, his voice coming out slurred. You tell me. Porter found you on the floor when he came by to check on you. You've been out for an hour. I was making coffee and then you fell. Doc's on his way. The doctor was an older man named Sutton who'd seen everything the frontier could throw at a body. He examined Elias thoroughly, checked his heart, his breathing, his eyes. How long has this been happening? Sutton asked. How long has what been happening? The fatigue, the confusion, the weakness. I'm old, that's what happens. This is different. Your heart's failing, Elias, not dramatically, but steadily. Could be months, could be a year, but it's going. The room went very quiet. You sure? Boone asked. As sure as I can be without opening him up, which I'm not going to do. Sutton packed his bag. Take it easy. No heavy work. Rest when you're tired. And make peace with whatever you need to make peace with. After he left, Boone sat down heavily. Jesus, Elias. It's fine. It's not fine. You're dying. We're all dying. I'm just doing it faster than some. How can you be so calm about this? Elias thought about it. Because I'm 65 years old and I've lived more life than most men get. Because I got to see this place one more time before I go. Because I'm not afraid anymore. You should be angry or sad or something. I'm tired, Boone. Just tired. And maybe it's time to rest. But death, it turned out, was in no hurry. Winter gave way to spring.
Elias's episodes became more frequent, days where he couldn't get out of bed, where his heart raced for no reason, where breathing felt like work. But between those days were good ones, days where he could work in his garden, visit with friends, sit with Rust in the paddock. The horse knew something was wrong. Animals always knew. Rust would stand close, let Elias lean against him, offer the kind of wordless comfort only an animal could give.
"You've been the best partner a man could ask for," Elias told him one afternoon. "Better than I deserved." Rust's ear twitched. "When I'm gone, Henderson's going to take care of you," he promised. "You'll have good food, clean water, and a warm stable. You'll be okay." The horse turned his head, pressed his nose against Elias's chest. Warm breath, steady presence. 20 years of partnership in that simple gesture. Summer came. Elias's garden actually produced this year. Tomatoes, squash, beans, small victories. Mrs. Chen helped him can what he couldn't eat fresh, putting up jars for a winter he probably wouldn't see. "You're humoring me," he said. "I'm being practical. If you're still here in December, you'll want these. And if I'm not, then someone else will eat them and think of you." Boone started coming by every day, sometimes twice a day. They'd sit on Elias's porch and talk about nothing important. The weather, local gossip, the new family that moved in from back east. "You don't have to do this," Elias said one day. "I know. You got your own life. This is my life, sitting here with my friend. What else would I rather be doing?" In August, Elias had another collapse. This one lasted longer. When he woke, he was in Mrs. Chen's boarding house in his old room. Half the town was gathered downstairs, waiting for news. "You scared us," Mrs. Chen said. "Sorry. Don't be sorry. Just don't die yet. We're not ready. Don't think I get a choice in when." But he stabilized again. Rallied. Spent September sitting on Mrs. Chen's porch, watching Red Hollow move around him. People would stop to talk, to check on him, to share news. The town had adopted him completely, claimed him as theirs. It was more family than he'd had in decades. In October, Sheriff Porter came by with a strange request. "There's a man in jail," Porter said. "Came through 2 days ago, drunk and disorderly. Been asking to see you." "Who is he?" "Says his name is Chet. Says he rode with you 25 years ago." Elias searched his memory. Chet. The name rang a bell, faint but there. "Young kid? Messy hair? Always losing his hat?" "Sounds about right, except he's not young anymore." Elias made his way to the jail, Boone helping him walk. Chet was in the same cell Jace had occupied, looking older than Elias remembered, but unmistakably the same person. "Elias Crow," Chet said when he saw him. "Never thought I'd see you again. What are you doing here?" "Passing through. Heard stories about the Iron Judge living in Red Hollow. Thought it couldn't be true. But here you are." "Here I am. What do you want, Chet?" "Just to say thank you for what you taught me back then. You showed me how to be a lawman, how to stand up for people who couldn't stand up for themselves. I've spent 20 years doing that because of you." "You became a lawman?" "Marshal, actually. Wyoming territory. Got a wife, 3 kids, a life I'm proud of. All because you gave a stupid kid a chance and taught him something worth knowing." Elias sat down, suddenly exhausted. "I'm glad it worked out for you." "It did, and I wanted you to know that before—" Chet trailed off, seeing Elias's condition. "You're sick. Dying, but slowly. I'm sorry. Don't be. I've had a good run." They talked for an hour, reminiscing about old times, old cases, old victories. When Elias finally left, Porter released Chet with a warning to stay sober. As they walked back to the boarding house, Boone said, "That happened a lot? People you helped showing up to thank you? First time in years. Makes you think, doesn't it? How many lives you've touched without knowing it." It did make him think, made him wonder how many other Chets were out there, living good lives because of something he'd said or done decades ago. Made him wonder if maybe his legacy was bigger than Carson's Bend, broader than one failure. Made him wonder if he'd been wrong about himself all along. November brought the first snow. Elias watched it fall from Mrs. Chen's porch, wrapped in blankets, sipping tea that had gone cold. "Beautiful," he said. "It is. You know what the best part of dying slowly is? What's that? You get to say goodbye. Get to see one more snow, one more sunrise, one more smile from a friend. If you go quick, you miss all that. Mrs. Chen's eyes were wet. I'm going to miss you. I'm going to miss you too. You've been kinder to me than I deserved. You deserved every bit of it. That night, Elias's heart failed for the last time. He went to sleep in his old room at the boarding house and didn't wake up. Mrs. Chen found him in the morning, peaceful and still, finally at rest. The town mourned. They held a funeral that half the territory attended. People came from towns Elias didn't even remember visiting, telling stories about how he'd helped them, protected them, saved them. Chet came from Wyoming. Henderson closed the stable for the day. Even Marshal Coleman came, standing quietly at the back. They buried Elias in the town cemetery, under a cottonwood tree with a view of his land. The marker was simple. Elias Crow, the Iron Judge. He stood when others couldn't. But the story didn't end there. Rust grieved. The horse stopped eating, stood in his paddock staring toward Elias's land, made sounds that broke Henderson's heart. For 3 weeks, the old horse mourned in the only way he knew how. Then, slowly, he came back. Started eating again. Started moving around. But something had changed in him. He was gentler with the children who came to visit, more patient with the other horses, more present in a way that was hard to define. It was like Rust had decided to honor Elias by being the best version of himself. The horse lived another 3 years. He spent them in his paddock, visiting with anyone who came by, teaching young horses how to behave, being the solid, steady presence the stable needed. When Rust finally died, peacefully, in his sleep, at the age of 22, the town mourned again. And they buried him next to Elias, under the same cottonwood tree. The markers stood side by side, man and horse, partners who'd found something in each other that transcended species or time. A bond built not on dominance, but on mutual respect, not on perfection, but on shared imperfection and the choice to show up anyway. And Red Hollow changed. The story of Elias and Rust became legend, but not the kind of legend that creates distance, the kind that creates connection. Parents told their children about the man who chose mercy over vengeance, who showed that strength wasn't about violence, but about restraint, who proved that one failure didn't erase a lifetime of trying. The town became kinder, more patient, more willing to give second chances. When someone new rode in looking rough or dangerous, Red Hollow didn't immediately judge. They remembered that Elias had looked old and useless, and he'd saved them all. They learned to look deeper, to give people room to be more than first impressions. When someone failed, a business, a relationship, a promise, the town didn't condemn. They remembered Carson's Bend and how Elias had carried that failure for 20 years, and they chose not to let one mistake define a person. And when someone needed help, the town stood up. They didn't wait for a hero to save them. They remembered what Elias had told the rancher. Brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing the thing anyway. Boone lived another decade, spending his final years woodworking and telling stories about his friend Elias. Mrs. Chen passed at 87, still running her boarding house, still making the best tea in the territory. Henderson trained his son to run the stable, making sure every horse was treated with the respect Rust had earned. And at the edge of town, under that cottonwood tree, 2 markers stood side by side as years became decades, became generations. The Iron Judge and his horse. The man who learned that mercy was stronger than vengeance. The animal who proved loyalty was a choice, not an obligation. Together, they'd shown Red Hollow something worth remembering. That strength isn't about being invincible. It's about being human, about failing and getting up, about carrying your ghosts but not letting them drive you, about finding home not in a place but in the people who see you as you are and choose to stand beside you anyway. The legend grew, as legends do. But it grew in the right direction, not into myth that made Elias more than human, but into story that reminded people what humans could be. Strong enough to fight when necessary, wise enough to show mercy when possible, brave enough to put down roots after years of running, humble enough to let others help, imperfect enough to be real. And on quiet evenings, when the wind moved through Red Hollow just right, old-timers swore they could hear it, the sound of hoofbeats on dusty streets. An old man and his horse, still riding, still together, still teaching anyone willing to listen that the measure of a life isn't in how you die, but in how you choose to live, in what you build instead of destroy, in who you save instead of who you lose, in the legacy you leave not in stone or steel, but in the hearts of people who knew you and decided to be better because you existed. That was Elias Crow's gift to Red Hollow. That was what endured. Not the gunfights or the speed or the legend of the Iron Judge, but the simple, profound truth that one person choosing to be decent could change everything. And that some bonds, between man and horse, between friends, between a broken soul and a town willing to help it heal, were stronger than time, stronger than death, stronger than all the ghosts that haunted the dark. Those bonds didn't end, they transformed. They became the stories we tell, the lessons we learn, the better world we build. And in Red Hollow, in that small frontier town that Elias Crow accidentally saved and deliberately loved, those bonds lived on. Forever.